Australia are having strange and unexplainable encounters.
So welcome to another episode of Strange Encounters on 100.3 Bay FM, the Heart, Soul and...
Spirit of the Bay.
The Spirit of the Bay. And who do we have with us this evening, Cosmic Girl?
We have the wonderful Aunty Mulara with us tonight. And Aunty Mulara is fascinating. I met her some years ago and I just find her to be a very fascinating person. She's a shaman, a spiritual counsellor, but she's also an Aboriginal elder and senior law woman, and recently initiated by Baiame himself. My goodness, welcome to the show, Mulara.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Oh, so good for you to come along. I've got to know, what is a senior law woman?
Good question. So it means that I'm initiated
into
as Aboriginal law. I'm initiated under law, and you only get access to certain levels of knowledge through initiation. So I've now received 4 levels of initiation, and then Baiame himself, but I can talk about that later.
Yeah. So when you say 4 levels of initiation, what does
I
what
can't
is that?
tell you.
Oh, okay. All right. So how many levels are there? Can you tell us how many levels?
It's above your pay grade, Cheryl.
I know.
So I'm talking. If I'm going to talk about law and the Aboriginal way, I just want to just do a. I need to do a proper way. So that is to call on the ancestors of the dreaming and the ancestors of all the law men and law women of this land that's called Australia. That the teachings that come through me have come from them. These teachings are well over 80,000 years and have been passed on by the highest initiates of each mob. We do collectively have law gatherings. You can't Google us.
Damn.
I was writing it down and she was like, Google this. Yeah, not happening. Okay.
No.
Yeah. That's an amazing tradition.
Yeah, well, it's the longest, as you know, the longest living culture. And much of our law has been lost because of colonisation. And so the people who hold the law and are teaching the law, not everybody teaches the law, there are many who hold it for their various mobs, but those who are given the teachings to pass on, you have to hold a certain vibration. You can't be just given law or go through law. Law is actually quite harsh. It's not easy to just step through law. It's actually quite a harsh law. And I can only speak for my experience and for what I've been given permission to speak about.
So can I ask you, Auntie, just with regards to a certain vibration? Now, I find that fascinating. Can you expand that a little bit more for us and the listeners?
So the old people, who many of whom are dying out now, passing on, we would say, are very concerned about the next generations coming through not able to be in full truth of culture and of doing business proper way. We've got all sorts of interruptions such as drugs, alcohol, and the what is it about money? The corruption around money. You know, there'll be communities are divided between, and this is the next generation. The older people don't do this. They get very upset about how country has been traded for money that goes into the hands of the very few, typically one family. But that's not what this is about today. So with that corruption comes an interference in the energy field. Oh, this is a paranormal. Oh, yeah, I can talk about that. Yeah. Okay, so there's an interruption in their energy field, and that so they're not pure, and therefore they can't hold the purity of the teaching because they're high-level teachings. So each level of law you go through, there's another veil of teachings and understanding and knowledge that's revealed to you. You see another layer. And in a paranormal way, well, I guess we're talking really about what's in the astral field.
Right, okay.
But it's more than that. As above, so below. So we also have eyes in the earth, underground. So there's lots going on. But unfortunately, we've had our mobs have been affected by colonialism, modern day temptations that, you know, probably all communities have to deal with.
There's so many sort of parallels you can draw with, you know, modern Western societies right around the world.
Yeah, except the difficulty with us is that the added difficulty is that trauma that's being passed on through the DNA, and it's in the land. The land holds the memories, and so from a paranormal perspective, understand that hasn't gone away. All that, you know, whatever has happened in those places. So you will feel places that are really good, you'll feel places that are really bad, and that's because of whatever has happened there or has been practiced there is held there. It's the memory of the land and the ancestors.
So that's the work that you're doing, isn't it? The healing work. Yeah. And I guess are you performing ceremonies at those places for that healing?
Yeah, I do. I get called to do land clearings, for example, or depends on what it is. So there might be a clearing of Mount Ninderry was one, I can tell you. We're in Queensland here, so Mount Ninderry, there was a lot of disturbance for families in the area whose kids could see spirits, but they weren't happy, lovely spirits. They were quite demonic in there.
How did they manifest, Auntie? What were they seeing?
Well, that's their story.
Okay.
I can't really
sure
tell you what their story is. You have to ask them. But I was brought in because I realised everything they tried was not working, and that there must be something else, some other key to having this released. And so there was another key, and that key was the hundreds of Aboriginal spirits that were held there in purgatory, which is what I say is in between the worlds, is actually truth of, that's what purgatory is. That's what I've come to understand. And that the release had to be from Aboriginal elder who holds a particular vibration to be able to do the work to release all of them to go back home. And the report is, I'm just telling you in a nutshell, but actually it takes a whole day.
I was going to say, is it a complex process? There was a lot to the ritual?
Yeah.
But obviously we can't speak about it. No.
It's the sacredness of the work.
Yes, of course.
And the sacredness of the relationships. So the sacredness of the relationship I have with the ancestors of all over this country. It's not just my own ancestors, it's all of them. I hold that level. And I must be honourable and respectful, even though they've passed on, because they're still, it's got to be done the proper way.
Friday nights on Bay FM with Cosmic Girl and Sifu.
Is vibration, is it specific to your DNA, to your lineage, or can the specific vibration say, can you learn this important healing tradition if you are non-Indigenous?
Yes, I work with people who aren't Indigenous. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they can hold the vibration.
That's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's, so if I go back to the old people who gave me teachings and kept saying to me, you know, you've got to get these teachings out there, girl. That's how they speak. Get these teachings out there, girl. You know, we've got to help them because they won't know how to help themselves when the time comes. So there's already been prophecies about what's coming, and we're kind of in one now. There's one that's passed. We're in one now, and there's one coming, a biggie. And don't interrupt me yet.
Sorry. I've got so much to ask. It's just fascinating. I'm sorry.
So the point being that they said you've got to get these teachings out there. Our own people, our kids, they can't do it. They're drugged out, or, do you know, we have the highest rates of suicide in any way in which you measure it anywhere in the world. We have lots of young people suiciding. It's terrible. And this is about, a disparate in spirit, not being connected to their culture, to their country, to the spirit of the land, to their teachings. It's so rich when you enter that space. It's very rich cultural tradition. But our cultural law, LORE, is the way we put in practice. It's how we live our life, how we're our responsibility under spiritual law, LAW. So the spiritual law is really our dreaming. And the dreaming is how we come into creation. That's our spiritual law. So Baiame is a creator being, a really important creator being of Aboriginal Australia. And I can't speak for the Torres Strait Islanders, by the way, because I'm not that. And I haven't been given those teachings, so I can't speak about that. The Wandjina is another creator being that the Kimberley people have as their god. I have done some work with I had a Kimberley law woman who taught me very early in my life. And she's the one that told me that, if you have one drop of Aboriginal blood, you're Aboriginal. But she's also one of the very ones that really impressed upon me that we've got to get these teachings out there, because our kids, they can't, they're too distracted by the things that are negative risks, not positive risks. Risk-taking we understand, but taking the negative risks that ends up them taking their life is just, they can't hold the vibration of the teachings. And they are very spiritual. So very spiritual. Yeah. They're just spiritual, whatever, however you want to call it. So I think there's a couple of things to say here. So first of all, you only have access to knowledge of the law of the land through initiation, and because it's too powerful, it's too strong. And so we need our people. And in fact, we would love everyone to go through initiation. That's what I've been told. And I've been trained by the best. I've been taught, really, actually, not trained, taught by the best. And they are very high-level law keepers of this country, and they are keeping the law, LAW and LORE law. They keep the spiritual law intact, and they ensure that the cultural law is administered in such a way that we are fulfilling our responsibility, which is that everything should be kept alive. Everything stays alive, and that we are given what we need to learn in the next level of teachings. I'm cutting out probably the first 30 years here by saying that, but there's something for everyone in our traditional way. I didn't grow up in tradition. I grew up I grew up in the outback. What am I saying? But I grew up in both the city and the outback. My mother lived in Inaminka, which is in those days it was miles, so 650 miles north of Adelaide, in the little corner of where South Australia comes into Queensland. That's where she lived. And then I grew up in Adelaide. That's where I did my schooling. My mother never knew who her father was until my spirit was welcomed back to Adnamatna country. And from there on, so they could see that in me, the elders then tracked who's my parentage.
Wow. And
worked out that my grandfather is Adnamatna. And so I am Adnamatna. His mother was Kuyani, so I'm Adnamatna Kuyani is my Aboriginal line. But I also have Afghani.
I read
because
that. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Of the intermarriage. So my mother's mother had a liaison with an Afghani camel driver because it was Central Australia. And so, therefore, that produced my grandmother, my mother's mother.
And you've got some Scottish in your background too,
yeah,
don't you?
Scottish and Irish.
You're the real mixed bag, aren't you?
I've got it covered, baby. I've got Australian Indigenous, I've got the Indian subcontinent, and I've got the Celts all lined up. But the Aboriginal's strong. Yeah.
So imagine putting that outfit together.
Friday nights on Bay FM with Cosmic Girl and Sifu.
Now, you're also the holder of the white whale dreaming. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So it's hard to explain about things without talking about the dreaming. So it's good to thank you for that opportunity. So the dreaming, so different parts of Australia have their dreaming stories, their creation stories. And we each have our totems, which is how we learn how to live our cultural law, our proper way. It's how we put our spiritual law into practice. It's basically our rules, if you like. And there are protocols and protocols and protocols about how these things operate. So the white whale, when I was given white whale, it was, and to hold the law of which at the same time was just a bit much at the time, I got to say. So, but it's over time I realise what that means. So the white whale dreaming, the story of that creation is that the star maidens came down and gave the white whale the records of humanity and the records of all living beings, actually. The whales are the record keepers. And they gave it to the white whale. She lives in the ocean below the ocean. And with those records, she has spread them throughout the world, throughout the planet. And you might know that there's a bit of white in every whale. And so she can transmit to each whale through that patch of white. It gives her transmission. And so she holds those records, and the records, as they've been changing and advancing, they continue to change the song of the whale. And that dreaming story, she goes across on the latitude, same latitude as what some people know as grid point 44. It's on that latitude. I've never quite got to the degree of it, but anyway, there's a point across Australia. It's one of the latitudes, and she travels that latitude through Noongar country, and I was initiated in Noongar country. That's why I got white whale. And she goes through Mooning country, where Uncle Bunna Laurie is the keeper of the white whale dreaming and songlines there. And it goes up through my country, and then across. It goes in two directions, across to Gulf of Carpentaria, and then also across to, it branches out into two, across New South Wales, Queensland, and that's Aunty Lila, I think Lila, looks after that songline. So we work in unison. So, for example, when there's a pot of whales beached, we might all be contacted. And it's, again, you can't Google us. You've got to, someone knows someone knows someone knows someone. And eventually we're all contacted, and we all do work in spirit with our whale, because I'm a whale. That's how it works. That's not only is it my totem, I am a whale. I'm actually a null whale. So I have I break through the illusion with the tooth that I have. And a white null whale is my totem. So that's just an example of a dreaming story that's very strong, and I can't really tell you much more than that, other than there is a lot more, but other than to say that the various ones, I know Uncle Bunna is really amazing at singing up the whales, and Aunty Lilith the same. So I'm sort of central desert area, where you won't find a whale unless you look, unless you know where to see them, but they're not in physical form. They're in spirit form, but they appear in different places.
Now, you mentioned grid point 44. I've just got to jump on this because I know around that area there's been a lot of UFO reports at various times. And that's down near south of the Flinders Ranges, is it? Somewhere
it's in the Northern Flinders Ranges.
Okay, right. And you actually take groups of people down there to go to sacred sites?
Privately.
Private groups, yeah. Okay. So when you've been there, have you ever seen anything unusual, experienced anything unusual at that site, or any other sacred site for that matter?
I have seen some interesting things, and they're not just at that point. That's just a concentrated energy point. There are other concentrated energy points. I have seen the Min Min lights. I have seen a UFO. I've even been instructed by my law elder to call in UFOs. Now, I'm saying that, and I know that there's members of my mob who will say, "Oh no, she's the UFO woman. We can't speak to her. She's voodoo type." I'm like, they're not speaking to their elders, or their elders aren't talking to them. Because I've got lots of stories from elders of the area. There's UFOs going across all the time. There's also petroglyphs of UFOs. So we have hundreds of kilometres of petroglyphs in our country, and you've got to know where to go. But there's petroglyphs of UFOs in the rock.
And is there some sort of a connection? I believe I've read somewhere that there's a connection to the Pleiades in relation to that.
Okay, so when I mentioned earlier about the star maidens coming down, so they would be they're the Pleiadians. I understand that to be the Pleiadians, but not only 3 of them, not the 7. So we talk about the 7 sisters as a really important dreaming for all of us, right across the southern hemisphere. Actually, I think the 7 sisters is a dreaming in different countries, let alone different mobs in Australia. But we have it's a similar, very strong, and we've always known we're from somewhere else, and we'd point up to the stars and we'd say, we're from there, we're from the stars, we know we're from the stars, and anybody listening here will know that too. We are all from the stars, but we feel that the 7 sisters dreaming is about how we've come from the Pleiades. Yeah.
I could listen to this.
Yeah, all day.
This is so fascinating.
All right. Now I wanted to go on to where do we start? Dig in.
Well, look, I'm fascinated with songlines because as like a non-initiated or someone on the outside looking in, it's such there's such complexity to it and subtlety to it, and it's really hard to bend your head around unless you're looking at it from an esoteric point of view as well. If you're willing to open your mind to the possibility that magic plays some very significant part of this, then you're not really going to get the picture. Would that be correct to say?
Yeah, it's
Auntie?
probably pretty true. Yeah, yeah.
And the types of information, like there's so much in it.
So what I can say is that the songlines, traditionally the songlines, is like a map. It's the akashic record of the landscape, and so it's like a master archive. It's the master archive of it's the record of over 80,000 years of a continuous civilization. So traditionally, the lawman would be the one who would hold the song. It doesn't mean he's the only one that knew it. We would all know the song lines, potentially, but the one that sang it up for the mob would be the lawman, the main lawman. And he's the one that would sing it for the group to make sure when we're travelling across country. The traditional the early anthropologists never bumped into an Aboriginal person who was lost, did they?
No, I can't say they did. Well, they knew exactly where they were, what they were doing.
Exactly where they were. Because of the song. So to cross country, you need to know the song. And in the song is where everything is in relation to everything else. And you had different verses for different seasons. So, if it was a wet season or a dry season or whatever, the up north is a short 3-week season, which would be equivalent to our spring, our understanding of spring. They have 8 seasons up there, 6 to 8 seasons.
Friday nights on Bay FM with Cosmic Girl and Sifu.
So you had the song of your particular area, the boundaries of your mob, your tribe. You knew those songs, and then where the boundaries are to the next tribe would be a shared song line, right? So the next mob would know that song line too.
Wow.
There's a shared song line. So in Wollumbin, some people call it Mount Warning, but we don't like to call it Mount Warning. We call it Wollumbin, or Wollumbini Momalai is her true name.
What does that mean?
New South Wales. She's in New South Wales, a mountain in New South Wales.
But what is the actual name?
Let me see if I can get it. Wollambimbi Malanai.
Oh, close. Wollumbini Momalai, Mother Mountain.
Oh, okay. So Mother Mountain.
Yeah, so through Mother Mountain, there's a shared song line, very strong song line, and that's shared by the Gidabul people on one side and the Narakwa people on the other. But what the colonisers have done is called it Bundjalung country. It's got nothing to do with Bundjalung country. In fact, Bundjalung is not even a proper name for a mob. So that was just meaning when the people, the ancestors of the Bundjalung, what's called now Bundjalung, were driven north, the Ngarakwa people said to them, "Oh, you come. This can be your land. This can be your land. You're Bunji, brother. This can be your land. Your brother on land, Bundjalung." So when the early anthropologists, yet again, bump into the first ones in that area, "Oh, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm Bundjalung." Wrong. So there's a lot of misinformation, and that's just one of them. But I was getting back to shared songlines. So to cross country, when you go into country, you've got to know this traditionally, know the songline and the song, because then A, you've got permission to cross country, because B, we are responsible for your safety. So that's what the true welcome to country is about. You do a welcome to country would have been that you were given the song, there would be ceremony, there would be a dance, and there would be singing. You were being given the song proper way, ceremoniously, so that you would then travel across our country, and we knew that you'd be safe. Because we actually can track you in the spirit world, where you are and what you're doing. But we need to make sure that you're okay. And that's why Aboriginal people can get upset when there hasn't been respect about crossing country, particularly in the remote areas, and then someone's killed and died, because they feel like they've got this belief around what we call payback, but it's like whatever happens to someone in your country is your responsibility, and something's going to happen to you because of it.
I just keep wanting to ask for permission, because I'm wanting to jump in. My mind's racing as it usually does on this stuff. Just in terms of the welcome to country, we've got it all wrong. Being part of government organisations, and it seems the only time we know elders or we interact with elders is when we have a request to perform a welcome to country. But there's so much more to it. But the thing is too, though, is it seems to me, just listening to the wealth of information that you have, the elders have like far more than a PhD level of understanding of the land, our country, and how to navigate it in the esoteric sense, and also in the physical plane as well. Yet we reduce them down to this, let's just call an elder to come in and do a welcome to country before we have some sort of whatever event. Would that be fair to say? And
Yeah,
I'm sort of flabbergasted by that.
Without understanding the richness, the rich complexity of the knowledge that they have, that they hold, that could be,
so much more.
Yeah, unpacked and how it can be utilised. Amazing.
Well, it's sort of like 250 odd years as compared to 80,000 years of knowledge and harmonious dwelling in a place. And trying to value that higher than it just doesn't make sense at all. Yeah. Really?
Yeah. Interesting.
And how do they tell you that? They don't have they feel powerless.
You've done a very good job.
Well, it's just
It's a very short
different.
our listeners, listening tonight would just be, this is just so fascinating, and it's it's like to me listening to these. I don't want to use the term tales, but the recounting of the history and the star people and the mythology that really isn't mythology. Hello, but it's like it's just as big and it's just as bold, and it captures the imagination just as much as any of like the Greek stories,
the Greek
and
gods,
the massive playing out on that godlike, that epic scale, and we have it. We're blessed, and we have that right here in this country. Yet we know so little about it. Yeah, it's a travesty.
It is. Yep, it's a sin. Yeah, absolutely.
It blows me away.
Yeah. But I was really interested in the songlines because I was reading on your website that humans can have songlines too.
Human songlines, yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
So if we think about songlines as like a blueprint, so it's a songlines of a country is like a blueprint of the country. It's country is a story, and there's knowledge in the story, and that's in the blueprint of the land, and the memories are held there, and that's the same with the person, with the human songlines.
I've never heard of that before.
Hang around, you'll get to know a bit. So that's teachings I have been given. So I work with people to heal their songlines, and also to connect them to their songlines, to country, to their ancestors, to perhaps where they're from. I get quite a lot of Aboriginal people coming to the Elders Mystery School, for example, that I run every year, looking for connection to country, connection with elders, connection to culture, connection to the spirit of the land. And there's so many who have been dislocated. But you know what? I get that from non-Aboriginal people too who come.
Oh, yeah.
It's a theme.
Yes.
And how rich our traditional culture was in giving people a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of community, to feel loved. It was beyond, we don't even have a word for love or goodbye or anything like that. It's like, it just is. It's just, you are part of our mob. We work out, the very first thing we'll do, if ever you meet an Aboriginal person, they'll often try and work out what is your relationship to them. It's all relationship based. And then once they've worked that out and which side of the moiety you are, they'll know how they can relate to you. Because that's part of our cultural law. Very important part of our cultural law is our kinship system. And it's not just human kinship, it's the animals, the birds, the trees, the plants. That's all our kinship system. And knowing who our kin is means that which ones we look after. For example, a bit hard to do, but I can't eat whale because I am a whale. Same with the totem. If you were a kangaroo, you can't eat kangaroo. But if you come to my country, you certainly can, because I love kangaroo. Whereas my family totem's emu, so we can't have emu. But in Pitjantjatjara land, that's a delicacy for them. You go visit Pitjantjatjara people, they'll say, "Oh, we'll put an emu on the coals." We have to tell them I can't eat it. So, the point being that the whole of the country, just like the human, but the whole of the country is like the creators have divvied up and said, this bit's yours to look after, and here's your boundaries, and these are the totems that are your kin, your family. And then in this other one over here, you've got different totems. So it has a balance. The whole system of relationships is always held in balance, and it's always revered as sacred. So even if we didn't kill every day, meat every day. That wasn't our diet. But whenever we did, we always did it in a spiritual way. And the person who was going to do the actual killing, they took on the spirit of the animal before they went out there. And then when they're out there, they're doing the dancing and the calling up the spirit of the animals, that the animal presented itself for the whole mob. And then after it was just really revered when the animal was given up for the mob to continue. It's their living. They did a great ceremonial blessing on the spirit of the animal. Very well done. It's so revered. Just knowing that it's kin. Back to the songline. So the human songline. So we get all stuffed up, don't we? Get logged in. What gets logged into our system are all of the bad memories, and also good memories, but the bad seems to outweigh the good. But also the trauma. Trauma is passed on through generations, intergenerational trauma, and I can see that in people, and I can help clear it. And there are others who do that too, I'm sure, who aren't necessarily Aboriginal. But for me, when I work with ochre on somebody, I can see their blueprint. So if I was to put ochre on you, what comes alive, because it's such a rich product. It's not just ochre. It's not just dirt. I've got particular ochre that has a high illumination. And remember, I'm a Nile whale, so I'm piercing through the aura of you. When I put on the ochre, I actually see you, and can see where the healing needs to take place and where your connections are to country, to kin.
Friday nights on BFM with Cosmic Girl and Sifu.
Just with Auntie, with the song lines, just that if we look at that or unpack that term song, I find that fascinating as well, because with the singing there is a certain harmonic or vibration. How do you see that as playing a part of that whole process? I'm
going to go backwards. So if I say to the human, I get them to find their song, find their note,
Really?
Start to sing themselves up. Yes.
I love
sing
that.
yourself up, so that no more suppression and being controlled by external forces. Just to sing yourself up, and how you feel when you sing. It doesn't matter what you're singing, but
It's
sing.
true, isn't it?
Start with humming. I'd say to your listeners, start humming. Even when you're walking, just start to hum. Start to feel, allow Mother Nature to infiltrate your field and start to feel her vibration. Because actually we're meant to be in partnership with the earth, not to conquer it. And find your song, sing yourself up. So if I track back, what we did traditionally is sing up the land. I mean, this country is phenomenal. It's been sung up, the whole entire country, everything, every rock, every tree, every person, everything, every creek, every river, everything has been sung for many thousands of years. And so the vibration of that is very high. It's a really strong vibration. But the songlines have been changed and altered by mining and other things, but mostly mining. And so in many places, the songlines have been disrupted. And where the songlines have been disrupted might be where you could say there's paranormal activity. And that makes sense when I talk to you. That's about the energy of the land. But also with the songlines, that's on top of the earth, on top of the landscape, there's a corresponding spirit line. All right. And that's where part of the paranormal activity is when the spirits, our dreaming spirits, get really sick and get really upset, get really, they start to play havoc on people, if you like. They're trying to say, you've done something wrong here and you need to correct it. So there's an example in the Pilbara area that I know of that where one of my elders, he had to go up there and talk to the elders, and they had to try and work with the law men in particular, and the law women, I suppose, did it their way, to help release the spirits who were very unhappy. They were creating a lot of disturbance. So that's just one example of paranormal activity.
And you hear I've heard those sorts of stories too, when people will build houses or buildings on pieces of land, or they'll move into a house that's on a land, but they find out later that it was actually sacred land, and maybe
a burial site.
Yeah, something like that, and the spirits are not happy, or certain ceremonies have to be performed to help appease the spirits and settle them, or all those sorts of things.
It's true.
You do that sort of thing?
Yeah. I've been asked a lot, actually, the Sunshine Coast, to do a lot of releasing of, people very sensitive. Those who are sensitive to energy are just knowing something's wrong. And that, I would say, since I've come to Queensland, I'm originally from South Australia, that's probably been the area that I've been mostly called to clear. And, we now know that there's a map of the massacre sites that's been compiled by the University of New South Wales. It's been really informative. Certainly there are lots of massacre sites there. There's also places that are burial sites that were whole, developments were built on top of burial sites. That is a no-no. Can you imagine, the cemeteries of our colonial people, where the cemeteries aren't they sacred? That's the same. The sacredness of our of our old people, who've passed on, your old people, my old people, all of them, we go putting, housing developments on top of them, you're asking for trouble, big time. So that's what has happened. And there was one terrible story of a woman who couldn't get anybody to help her to clear. She knew there was a problem in her house and the one next door. There had been 3 hangings within 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Men had just hung themselves. It was just like, what? They all just left. Forget about, trying to sell a house and whatever, doing all that preparation. They just left. And I don't know what they've done now, whether they've actually tried to sell it or whether they had sold it. But don't you think there's some sort of responsibility of housing development to find out just what is going on, or someone to find that out?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think housing development would be too keen. They make their money and they move on to the next.
That's right, yeah.
But I was going to ask, Auntie, we were talking over coffee before about protection and like psychic protection, energetic protection when you go out into these areas on country that may be compromised. And I know there's probably a few paranormal crews listening to the show tonight that would be very interested in your take on how does one protect themselves. So can you, A, do it sufficiently or effectively, and B, if you can, how do you actually get that to happen? How do you make that work for you?
First of all, you've got to have a good intention. Everything's about intention. So I would have a ceremony. Doesn't have to be a big one. Just even using sage to sage yourself, but just going into the site and say, I don't bring anything that shouldn't be in that place. I don't bring any of that with me. So partly our smoking, like a smoking ceremony.
Yeah,
that's it. So a smoking ceremony is that we leave everything behind, and we don't bring anything that ought not to be there energetically. So it's all about energy. So I would definitely do that, and I would say out loud to call on the spirit of the land and the ancestors to protect you. As you're going in, you are coming in with a good heart, and you're wanting to understand and learn what this activity is about. But I do not give permission for any entity to come into my energy field at any time. I call on my sovereignty on all of my bodies, my mind, my body, my energy field, full sovereignty, and do not give permission for anything to jump in, because you're asking for trouble for some of these places. That could be really disturbing.
So if you've had a bad day or having a bad week or a bad month or even a bad life.
Wow, okay.
Up until now.
Yeah. It's not advisable to go out and go to these places. No, because you're sort of left open and things can jump into your energy field. Yeah. So it just makes you wonder about how much, because there are times, even when we're really tired, and we'll bump up against someone who's had a bad day, and it's like their energy.
Suddenly we feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. Like, their vibes are sort of falling off on us like dandruff,
Good way of putting it.
Keep your dandruff to yourself.
But what about when people are intentionally wanting to harm you? And I was thinking about, I've read about the Kurdaitcha men, or women, I suppose.
Yes.
Are there Kurdaitcha women as well? But what are they? What do they do? And, and do they play a particular role in a community?
Yes, so traditional way, the Kurdaitcha men keep the law. They make sure that the law stays the law. So they work with featherfoots, we also call them, because they tend to have, they can disguise themselves as emus, and they're very, very, well, in my country, that's what they are, featherfoot. And they don't leave any marks, any tracks or anything. So they work in the astral plane, so they can send arrows, poison, all sorts of things in the astral field. But they would only ever do that if you have done the wrong thing. And you haven't yet been brought to law for punishment. They can also do positive things. So they can also just make sure that the boundary in the field of the mob is clear and clean and protected. And so that no other beings because we share this planet with lots of different beings in a multidimensional way. So we're not just humans on this planet, and so they make sure that the boundaries of the mob are protected. But the Kurdaitcha men are very seriously, they're like the policemen.
Yeah.
They're like the police.
Yeah. Do they avenge the dead? Or could they?
That's a
would
good question. That's a
and what the people who have, because you said it's about when people haven't been brought to justice in it, whether it's spiritual or in ordinary reality.
They can. Yeah, they can. I think. Yeah, So the
listeners, she's being very tight-lipped about this.
There's only so much Auntie can talk about, really.
Yes.
Because that's some really serious business.
That is serious business, yes.
But they talk about singing people to death as well, and the bone pointing and all those sorts of things. Now, this is probably, I'm probably going to get hit with a wall with this question too, but I'll ask a question anyway. In terms of the actual medium, so the bone itself, can you talk to us a little bit about?
It's a human bone.
It's a human bone.
Really?
Yeah, and it's fashioned in a particular way, almost like a needlepoint, isn't it?
I actually don't know about that. I think it'll be very old, and it'll have a lot of energy in it. So it may have been fashioned over time, but the person who can hold that bone and point it is someone to be feared. Because if you've had the bone pointed at you, you will be dead within 3 days.
Wow.
So I've read in various cultures that the bone is endowed with magical powers, but I guess that might be interpreted as intention.
Yeah, no, it's also the magic.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. There's definitely a magical, mystical realm in Aboriginal spirituality for sure. Yep.
Does the person have to know that the bone is being pointed at them, or
no, the bone will be pointed at them.
If they didn't know, it would still be active?
My hunch would be no. It's tended to be pointed at the person, and then from that point on, no one can see them, even if they are still physically there. Suddenly they become invisible.
Wow.
And
I've never heard of that before.
No one will see you, speak to you, nothing, no more. You're done. You're gone for.
It's like a spiritual shunning.
That's a really good way to put it. Wow.
Yeah, you're shunned. You are banned from you're banished. Banished from the tribe, banished from this lifetime.
And that's sort of like death for Indigenous people too, because they're
relationship based.
Yes, it's all about that connection. And you sever that, and that's it for them. Yeah.
Friday nights on BFM with Cosmic Girl and Sifu.
And that really leads to an interesting proposition, Cosmic Girl. Does pointing the bone work on non-Indigenous people? If Kurdaitcha pointed the bone at someone who wasn't initiated or wasn't part of any Indigenous mob,
Or would they?
Or would they? Have they done that?
It tends to not be. I don't know that it's the Kurdaitcha man that does it. It's possibly whatever the equivalent of witch doctor is.
Oh, okay.
Is that something different again?
Yeah.
So
we have a few different things.
Is that like a negative shaman? Is that what that is, or
Wambi? In my language, it'd be under our law, under Williru law. It's called the Wambi doctor.
Okay.
Wow.
Like the witch doctor. Have a person who can actually put the spells on, just like we have a medicine woman equivalent. We're a medicine woman with the herbs and knows all the plants, and that's her teachings, and then she would pass that down. We have with the men, we have that equivalent.
In my culture, Creole culture, it's called Bonhomme Jibois, which is a man of the woods. And what they were like, they basically knew how to fashion or craft any spell or potion from collecting things in the environment. So very magical. It's just, I just get blown away. I'm sorry, listeners, I get blown away with just the relationship and the correlation between
the cultures,
all these Indigenous cultures across the world. We're all connected.
Yeah, so spells and potions, that we would do that. Curses. But but typically you get a chance, first of all. So, but you would be killed if you did something, if there was sexual abuse, for example. That's a no-no. And if you married wrong way, in other words, if you had sex with the wrong moiety, all of that, you would be killed, or the baby, if there was a baby from it, baby would be killed. It just is such a no-no.
And why?
Because you're mixing the blood. It's like incest. We have a no-no on that. So you can think about it. We've had the grandmothers keep the records of who's who in the zoo over thousands of generations.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
And we're to make sure that the bloodlines are pure. So in my country, it's 2. It's easier to remember. But in the north, in the Northern Territory, for example, or Arnhem Land, etc., or Northern Territory I'll talk about because I know, they have, like 8 bloodlines that are related to the female and 8 bloodlines related to the male. And so you've got 16 bloodlines that you're trying to understand and negotiate. So there is a system for that.
So is that so in the physical realm that people aren't born with deformities? I'm guessing.
True.
But does it also equate to the non-physical realm?
I was just going to ask that. Stay out of my head.
Get out of my head.
I might have to ask you, can you ask that question in another way?
We're talking about physical deformities, keeping the bloodlines clear.
Right, okay.
But what about the non-physical bloodlines?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So anywhere that would upset the rhythm, the cycle of life is a no-no. So they kept the marriage law, LORE, is the kinship law, is the basis of Aboriginal society. So important and fundamental. And it makes sure, like, there was a study done where if I take Northern Territory tribes, for example, it'd take something like 800 years for that bloodlines to come back to where they started. So it's impossible for the bloodlines to be crossed if you follow your proper moiety, your proper marriage law. Moiety is a Latin word, it wasn't our word. So it's a really strong, and talk about human songlines, it's a very strong songline. Whatever your skin name is, your moiety, your skin name, that is you. That is your blood type, so to speak. And you're not to mix your blood type.
I guess if you what's come up for me while you're talking about that is you're talking about ancestral trauma before. I mean, when even any culture, if you have trauma in one family line and trauma and none or not much in another family line, but when the 2 lines mix and you have a child, the child can inherit. So, Aunty, you were talking about when you were initiated by Baiame himself. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, it was completely a surprise. So I was with a whole group of spiritual aspirants, with another group of people who were on retreat, and we went out to the Baiame cave, which is fabulous. It's a real law. It's about law on that cave. It shows how different tribes you've come through. It's a painting of Baiame as a wedge-tailed eagle, and it shows him morphing from the Willy Wagtail, the guardians there, morphing from Willy Wagtail to wedge-tailed eagle, and really powerful sight. And why I say it's a law painting is because it had different markings there that you only see in law. Of different tribes who've said this is we pledge our allegiance to Baiame, and you can see that on the painting. God knows how old that painting is. It's never been touched up or anything. It's just incredible. Anyway, what happened to me is I walked up the steps because it's quite high. Walking up the steps, and I looked up at Baiame, and he opened his eyes and zapped me in my third eye. It was totally paralysed me. It was like waves of lightning came over me, and in those waves of lightning, there was different colours, there were different codes, different memories, different law. I was being given law teachings, and from the Creator himself. So I can tell you, you would never ever convince me that that painting is not alive, because it is. It's alive, and the law is real, and the consequences are real, as are the mystical, magical, spiritual prowess are real. It's all real. So I'm here. I have a PhD behind me. I can tell you, I've done my other training,
Your left brain
training, and I'm totally convinced that it's it. And my law elder, who's a very important man, Uncle Ken, he says the law's real, girl. It's real. And I shared him with that story, and he just nodded his head. He didn't have to say anything. He just knew what had happened to me. And that kind of initiation is just it's not possible to get from a human.
Yeah. Amazing.
And it was witnessed. Yeah. So I was paralysed for quite some time.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
It's a lot to process, really, isn't it?
It's a mystical experience, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm still working it through, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
So did we want to ask Auntie about Yowies?
Yes, we want to ask Auntie about Yowies.
All right, so I said earlier we share this world with other multidimensional beings. So we know that we share them with the little people. They're everywhere. Some might call them pygmies. Others might, well, we could call them the little ones, the little peoples are there. Leprechauns maybe, an island, whatever. But there's also the hairy ones. And the hairy ones are what you call the Yowies. And we know that we share the land in different parts. They have different pathways, and they're kind of interdimensional beings, but they do exist. And we just call them, they're the hairy ones. And the tip I can give anybody who's trying to chase Yowies is leave them alone. You will not win. They are far more superior in what they can do. And they have their own runs, we call it. So we just steer clear. They can have that run, and we have ours. That track, they have certain tracks that they run through.
What do you mean, superior things that they can do, Auntie? That's just fascinating. Like, for example?
Well, they can affect your energy field.
Right.
Yeah. They could just, with a thought, push you away, and you'll find yourself flinging through the air.
Okay.
Backwards.
Right.
Yeah. Don't go anywhere near them.
And there's reports
leave them alone.
There's reports of people like having rocks thrown at them and sticks thrown at tree branches actually thrown at them.
Well, there you go. Probably whole trees.
Yeah.
Even. Well, they do tend to hang out where there's a tree line or like a gully with some trees. That's sort of like it's their cover, but it's also where it's their entry and exit of their interdimensional portal pathways.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I just say, I'm telling you now, anyone listening to this, to leave them alone because they have a right to be left in peace and to have their run, just as we have a right to be left in peace.
Does curiosity ever get the better of them, and they come and check us out a little closer, or?
I think they do. I think they just pop in and out. You might see one, or you might see a footprint, or you might see a bit of hair or something somewhere, because there are surely those who are mischievous, who will step out and
if I was
try
a
and
Yowie,
trick
that's what
people.
I would do.
Yeah.
What, leave your hair somewhere?
If I had hair, it'd be a pretty sad Yowie. It'd be probably Australia's first hairless hairy one. Well, here comes Sifu, the hairless Yowie. Okay, sorry, Auntie.
Yeah. Anyway, they're the hairy people. We call them the hairy people. You call them the Yowie. I think we're talking about one and the same being.
Do you think they've actually caused people harm before? Is you said in their nature, not in their nature, but have they got a potential to do that? On a certain
they can. Like I said, they've got superior power, superior strength. They're superior in every way. They don't think like we do, I guess. It would be my guess. And they're not a human. They're a being in and of their own, line. So you're going to come off worse if you try chasing them or try and rounding them up or try do anything with them. You're going to come off worse.
So has that dented your enthusiasm to go out Yowie hunting and not take a weapon?
Well, actually, no, I wouldn't take a weapon anyway. It's funny, that we had this conversation a while back, and when all this stuff started dropping in for me over, a bit of time now, but especially in the last 6 months, Auntie, I used to carry weapons with me everywhere I went. Now I'm very loath to. In fact, it makes me sick. I cringe at the actual thought of carrying a blade and I used to have them. I used to have little pet names for my knives and my swords, but it's funny. I'm quite loathed to carry them now.
So it feels as though you have grown in your own power, empowerment, and know that you don't need them.
Yeah, I just
to protect yourself anymore.
Well, see, the thing is, I don't think they've got nothing to fear from me, and I don't have anything to fear from them. I don't feel that, if that makes sense. And if stuff happens, well, I guess it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And as Auntie was saying, they're a hell of a lot more powerful than we are.
Yeah,
so if I
exactly.
it doesn't matter what I was carrying. So I might as well approach it with wholeheartedly and the right mindset.
And just apologise. If you ever come across something, I think, oh, this doesn't feel right. Just say, oh, I apologise. I'm backing off. I'm leaving you. I'm not here. I'm not here to do any harm. I'm backing off, going back to where I was, leaving you.
Because sometimes you could just find yourself in the wrong place. Like, how would we know what a Yowie run was?
Yeah.
Unless we could feel that intuitively in an energetic sense, which I'm gathering a lot of Yowie enthusiasts or Yowie investigators out there wouldn't. I only know of a couple myself personally that would work in that way. So it's a very interesting proposition. But where do you think they're from? Is there any Indigenous law around the origins of the hairy ones? Like,
I don't know about the origins, but we just know that they live with us. It's not our law to do anything with them. It is law, spiritual law, that they have their run as well. They have their tracks, if you like. We have our tracks. That's their dreaming track. This is our dreaming track.
Okay.
So we share the planet, with interdimensional beings. And so we're not afraid of them, but we're mindful that they have their areas and we have ours. And having said that, it's not like 3D. They're actually in another dimensional place altogether. So if people have been having things thrown at them, it's because they're in their area. You've got to get out of that area. And it could be that you're, if it's you that's getting something thrown at you, that your particular energy field is interfering with them.
Oh, right. See, I've never heard it put that way before. So it could be like we're emitting some sort of white noise that they find distressing or unnerving or uncomfortable.
You're invading their space.
With our psychic energy.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I guess, Auntie, it's coming to that time of the evening where we wind up, although I could dead set talk to you forever, ever, and I will, because I'm gonna be stalking you now, and I guess you know that. You know that's going to happen. But if you got anything that you'd like to share with the Strange Encounters listeners out there, any messages for non-Indigenous Australians out there, like there'd be a lot of our listeners who are right-minded listeners who'd love to help or love to be a part of an authentic part of healing and reconciliation, and I guess restoration in this country.
I think it's time for the truth to be told.
Yeah.
And, truth-telling is so, so important. And while the truth is not being told in our schools about what happened to Aboriginal people, in our communities about what happened to Aboriginal people, by the government who keeps dismissing our proper history and herstory, that is a problem. And that is a trauma that is going through intergenerationally. And although we had the sorry given to Indigenous Australia, it's more than that. It's about actually acknowledging the truth of the massacres and the fact that this country was invaded. The fact that it was taken over, it wasn't ever granted. there wasn't ever sitting at the table and or around the sacred fire and talking about it. Our old people and the elders, oh, by the way, eldership used to be given, you're either the eldest of the tribe, it'll be, and in the moiety, in the bloodlines, you'd be the eldest male and female of each bloodline. You would be the council of elders, and that was what an elder was. Or you were given certain teachings, as I've been given, that makes you an elder because you're holding a very important position in the mob. But so the elders these days tend to be at a particular age. They may or may not hold spiritual prowess and understanding, but they're still nevertheless are our older people. And I also say the elders of all of our bloodlines, you know, Aboriginal, yes, but other lineages.
Yep.
We acknowledge the eldership in other people, in the European people and the who are here. We welcome you here. We welcome the boat people here. We welcome the refugees. It's not like that's actually our nature, is to welcome you to country. We haven't had a proper welcome to country in the proper way where a treaty has been formed. So what we really need to do is two big things. One is to tell the truth. And if you don't know what the truth is, find out. You know, look at the University of New South Wales map of the massacres, both of non-Indigenous as well as Indigenous, and whatever steps can be taken in terms of reconciliation. It's really about taking a step forward, and why not contact and do some work with your local Indigenous groups or someone, adopt an elder, I say. I'm happy for anybody to adopt me. But adopt an elder and start to learn from them and to care for them and to be taught by them. Ask them, they are very relevant. They hold a wealth of knowledge. And then to really make steps in each community to look, the treaty, how do we come together in this community so that we can all reconcile the fact of what's the truth of what really happened here. And I think you'll find that, Aboriginal people are caring and sharing. That's the bottom line. And my elders are the most amazing teachers of forgiveness. They said, we forgive because it hurts us, but we don't forget. We need it to be told, the truth to be told. And so the treaty is a way in which our ancestors and ourselves can welcome you properly to this country, your ancestors and yourselves. And yes, I know that the whole Invasion Day and all of that happened 230 years ago, and it's not you today, but the intergenerational trauma, as we've spoken before, that energetic imprint is still on the land.
Yeah.
It's still here, and our ancestors are still walking on this land in spirit. And that is what needs to be reconciled. So if that helps.
Oh, it certainly does. It certainly does. What an absolutely.
Great advice, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just such a I don't really have any words. I'm speechless for a change. But Auntie,
we must have Auntie back on the show many times.
What? But I'm sure there'd be a lovely way, Auntie, if we could defer to you to close this interview this evening with a few words, just as you did in terms of opening it for us, if you'd be kind enough, please.
Well, we just ask the ancestors to bless all of the listeners who are tuning in, to bless the spirit of the land that they're sitting on, to bless their ancestors, and to go in peace and make peace with your relations, make peace with each other, make peace with the country that you're in, adopt a tree, adopt an elder, think about how you speak and change the vibration which you are speaking so that it's in positive terms. And in your heart, hold everything sacred. And in the name of all that is sacred and holy, I thank you for having me, and I bless you. Nanga.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Bay FM 10 p.m. Fridays, the heart and soul of the Bay. Oh, and the spirit along the Redlands coast and beyond.